The Dominion ruled the galaxy without challenge. For thousands of years, they controlled hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, and countless fleets. No enemy had stood against them for long. They were the masters of the stars. But there was one name that still haunted their history: humans. Long ago, before the Dominion became supreme, there was a war. A war against a species unlike any other. The humans did not have the strongest bodies, the sharpest claws, or the deadliest weapons. But they were dangerous. They adapted, they learned, and they refused to surrender. The Dominion won, but it was not easy. Entire fleets were lost, whole planets burned, and legends were born. Then, one day, the humans were gone. Some believed they were wiped out. Others whispered that they had escaped into the dark. Now, humanity was nothing more than a story, a nightmare told to young Dominion soldiers, a warning: never underestimate a human. For centuries, there had been no sign of them, until now. Deep in space, near the abandoned planet Corin 7, a small Dominion patrol ship drifted through the void. The crew was bored. It had been years since anything interesting had happened in this region. Commander Velrix, a Tselkai officer with dark gray scales and sharp golden eyes, sat in his command chair. His kind had served the Dominion for generations. He was loyal. He was disciplined. And he did not believe in ghost stories. "Commander," a young officer called out, breaking the silence. "We're picking up something strange." Velrix frowned. "Strange? Be specific." "It's a signal, sir," the officer said, staring at the glowing symbols on his screen. "It's old, but the language, it's not Dominion." Velrix leaned forward. "Then what is it?" The officer hesitated, then whispered, "It's human, sir." For a moment, the bridge was silent. Every officer turned, their expressions filled with disbelief. "That's impossible," Velrix said, standing up. "Humans are extinct." "Check again." "I already did, sir," the officer replied. "The system confirms it. The signal is human." Velrix clenched his jaw. This was not possible. The humans were gone. They had been gone for thousands of years. And yet here was a signal, a message, waiting in the dark. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The screen flickered. At first, only static filled the air. Then a voice that was calm, steady, and unmistakably human. "We remember. Do you?" The bridge fell into dead silence. Velrix felt something cold in his chest, a chill that had nothing to do with space. The voice was not angry. It was not desperate. It was confident, as if it knew something the Dominion did not. The young officer swallowed hard. "Orders, sir." Velrix took a deep breath, traced the signal's origin. "Send a report to High Command." The officer hesitated. "Sir, if this is real, if humans are truly back, then the Dominion must know," Velrix interrupted. His voice was firm, but inside, his mind raced with uncertainty. The humans were gone. They were supposed to be extinct. And yet, somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, they had spoken again. And if the stories were true, if the legends were not exaggerations, then the Dominion had every reason to fear. Because the species that had once defied the galaxy had returned. Commander Velrix stood in the center of the Dominion warship Draft Corps, staring at the message that had shaken the entire bridge. "We remember. Do you?" The words echoed in his mind. He had studied history. He knew the legends. The humans were warriors, survivors, and strategists unlike any other species. But they had vanished long ago, wiped out by the Dominion. Or so they believed. Now, a human voice had spoken from the dark. Velrix turned to his officers. "Did we trace the signal?" "Yes, sir," the communications officer replied. "It came from the surface of Corin 7. Velrix narrowed his golden eyes. Corin 7 was a dead world, abandoned for centuries. If humans had been there, how long had they been hiding? "Prepare a landing team," Velrix ordered. "We are going down." The crew moved quickly, but there was tension in the air. No one spoke of it, but they all felt the same thing: fear. Hours later, a small Dominion dropship descended through the thick gray clouds of Corin 7. The landscape below was barren, covered in dust and ruins. Old structures stood like silent ghosts, reminders of a forgotten time. Velrix stepped off the ship, his boots sinking into the soft ground. He was accompanied by a team of elite soldiers, their weapons ready. The wind howled through the ruins, but there were no signs of life. "Scan the area," Velrix commanded. The soldiers activated their scanners, searching for any movement, any energy signature. The ruins were old, but something had been here recently. "Sir," one of the soldiers called. "Over here." Velrix walked forward and saw it, a small black device, no bigger than his hand. It pulsed with a soft blue light. "A transmitter," Velrix muttered. This was the source of the message. But where was the human? Before he could say anything else, the transmitter flickered, and a holographic figure appeared. It was a man, a human. He had short, dark hair, a strong face, and a calm expression. His eyes, however, held something unsettling: certainty. He was not afraid. Velrix and his soldiers stood frozen as the hologram spoke. "You came," the human said. "Good." Velrix stepped forward. "Who are you?" The human tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "My name is Daniel." Velrix's jaw tightened. "How are you here?" "Humanity is extinct." Daniel's expression did not change. "You believe that because it was convenient. The truth is, we never left." The soldiers shifted nervously. Velrix remained still. "Then where have you been?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Watching, learning, preparing." The word sent a chill through Velrix. "You are alone," Velrix said, trying to sound firm. "If humans survived, they are weak, scattered. You cannot fight the Dominion." Daniel's eyes darkened. "That's what your ancestors thought, too." Before Velrix could respond, the hologram flickered and disappeared. At the same moment, the transmitter sparked and exploded into a flash of bright light. Velrix covered his eyes, and when he looked again, the ruins were silent. The message was gone, but its impact remained. The soldiers looked at Velrix, waiting for orders. Velrix took a deep breath. We returned to the ship. Back on the Dravcore, Velrix stood before the holographic display of the Dominion High Command. The leaders of the Dominion appeared as shimmering figures, their faces grave. "You confirm the signal was human?" one of them asked. "Yes," Velrix said. "And more than that, they have survived. They have been hiding. And now, they have returned." The High Command was silent for a moment. Then the Supreme Chancellor spoke. "This is a threat to the Dominion," he said. "You will find this human, capture him, and if more exist." The Chancellor's voice hardened. "We must eliminate them before they become a problem." Velrix hesitated. The old stories of humanity were not just about their strength in battle. They were about their resilience, their intelligence, their ability to turn any war into their favor. Hunting them now might be the worst mistake the Dominion could make. But orders were orders. "As you command," Velrix said. As the transmission ended, he looked out at the stars. Somewhere, the humans were watching. And they were waiting. The Dominion High Command was in chaos. The news of a surviving human had spread through the highest ranks, and fear gripped the rulers of the galaxy. For centuries, they had believed humanity was gone, wiped from existence. Now, a single message had shattered that illusion. In the grand halls of the Dominion Council, the Supreme Chancellor sat at the center, surrounded by the most powerful leaders of the Empire. Their holographic forms flickered, each representing a different species that ruled under the Dominion's iron grip. "This cannot be ignored," growled Chancellor Vorkin, a towering reptilian with crimson scales. "Humans are too dangerous. We must act now. Agreed, hissed Minister Kale, a creature with dark, insect-like features. If one human survived, there may be more. We must find them and erase them before they become a threat. Not all members were convinced. An older chancellor, Vaz Relic, narrowed his deep-set eyes. Are we certain this is not a trick? Humans were clever. Perhaps this is a trap, a distraction from a larger plan. The Supreme Chancellor raised his hand, and the room fell silent. His gaze turned to the hologram of Commander Velrix, who stood aboard the Dominion warship Draft Corps. You have seen them, the Chancellor said. What do you believe? Velrix took a deep breath. His mind replayed the message, the calm certainty in Daniel's voice. He had read stories of human strategy, their ability to turn weakness into strength. They are not afraid of us, Velrix said finally. This was not an accident. That message was a warning. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably. The idea that humans had survived was already terrifying. But the idea that they had been watching all this time, that was worse. And what do you suggest? The Supreme Chancellor asked. Velrix straightened. We should proceed with caution. If we assume humans are weak and scattered, we may make a mistake. They are patient. They waited this long to reveal themselves. They may have more ships, more warriors, possibly even allies. Chancellor Vorkin slammed his clawed fist onto the table. Caution. The Dominion does not fear ghosts. We crushed humanity once. We can do it again. Velrix remained silent. That was the mistake the Dominion had made last time. Underestimating them. The Supreme Chancellor considered the arguments. Then he spoke. We will not act blindly. Velrix, you will take a fleet. Search for these humans. Find them, understand their strength. But if they are a threat, you must eliminate them. Velrix nodded. Understood. The council session ended. As the holograms disappeared, Velrix turned to his officers. Prepare the fleet. We hunt for the ghosts of the past. Somewhere in deep space, far from Dominion-controlled space, in a hidden sector of the galaxy, a human fleet floated in the void. Hundreds of warships, their surfaces dark and silent, hidden from scanners. This was the Phantom Armada, humanity's last great force, and at its heart, aboard the massive battleship Valkyrie, stood Admiral Reynolds. A message had arrived. The Dominion was moving. Daniel stood before the Admiral, his expression calm. It happened exactly as we planned. The Dominion is afraid. Reynolds studied the glowing star maps before him. Fear is good, but fear can make enemies reckless. Daniel nodded. They'll send their best. A fleet, maybe more. Then we will be ready, Reynolds said. His voice was steady, but there was something deeper behind it. Certainty. For centuries, humanity had hidden, rebuilding in the shadows. They had watched the Dominion grow arrogant, blind to the truth. Now, the time had come. We remember, Reynolds said softly. He turned to his officers, his gaze sharp as steel. And now, the galaxy will remember us. The Phantom Armada began to move. Humanity had returned. The Dominion fleet moved like a storm through space, warships spreading out in search of their ancient enemy. Commander Velrix stood on the bridge of the Draft Corps, staring at the endless darkness beyond. Somewhere, the humans were hiding, watching, waiting. Velrix had been given one mission: find them, study their strength, and, if necessary, eliminate them. But deep inside, a thought troubled him. The humans were not acting like a weak, desperate species. They had sent a message, not a plea for help, but a warning. They had revealed themselves, not in fear, but with confidence. Why? Velrix turned to his officers. Status. Scanners detect nothing yet, Commander, the officer replied. No ships, no energy signatures. It's as if they vanished. Velrix frowned. They're here, somewhere. As if in response to his words, an alarm blared across the bridge. Incoming transmission. Velrix's eyes narrowed. Origin. The officer hesitated. Unknown. But it's human. Velrix clenched his jaw. Put it through. The screen flickered, and there, standing tall and calm, was Daniel. The human's face was unreadable, but his eyes burned with quiet certainty. Still searching for us, Commander. Daniel's voice was steady. You won't find us that way. Velrix stepped forward. You should not have revealed yourselves. The Dominion will not allow humanity to rise again. Daniel tilted his head slightly, as if amused. You speak as if you have a choice. Velrix's hands curled into fists. You are outnumbered. The Dominion controls thousands of worlds, countless fleets. If you try to fight, you will be destroyed. Daniel's expression remained unchanged. You assume we will fight like before. That was your first mistake. Velrix's eyes narrowed. And the second. Daniel's voice was calm. Thinking you were the hunters. The transmission cut off. For a brief moment, silence filled the bridge. Then, chaos erupted. Commander, an officer shouted. Multiple ships appearing on sensors, right behind us. Velrix spun toward the main display. Out of the void, they came. Dark, silent warships, hundreds of them, emerging from the shadows. Their designs were sleek, sharp, and unlike anything Velrix had seen before. Human ships. They had been waiting. Velrix's blood ran cold. They weren't chasing ghosts. The ghosts were hunting them. Shields up. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Velrix barked. But before his crew could react, the first human ship fired. A single shot. Precise. Targeted. The Dominion warship beside the Dravcor exploded instantly. The bridge trembled as shockwaves rippled through space. Velrix's heart pounded. The humans hadn't just survived. They had evolved. They weren't fighting a desperate war. They were executing a plan. Velrix turned to his officers, his voice firm despite the storm inside him. Do not engage. Fall back. Now. The Dominion fleet tried to retreat, but the humans were faster, striking with ruthless efficiency. Their ships moved with precision, appearing and vanishing like ghosts, attacking weak points with deadly accuracy. Velrix watched as another Dominion cruiser was cut in half. A sinking feeling settled in his chest. This wasn't war. This was a message. And the Dominion had just received it loud and clear. Aboard the Valkyrie. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching the Dominion fleet crumble. Admiral Reynolds stood beside him, arms crossed. They're retreating, an officer reported. Reynolds nodded. Good. Let them run. Daniel exhaled slowly. They know the truth now. We're not just survivors. We're stronger. Reynolds turned, his gaze sharp. This was just the beginning. The Phantom Armator remained hidden in the void, waiting for the next move. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Dravcor limped through hyperspace, its hull scarred from the battle. Inside the command room, Commander Velrix stood in silence, staring at the reports on his screen. The Dominion had suffered a disaster. 10 warships had been lost. Dozens more were damaged. The humans had attacked with precision, efficiency, and terrifying speed. And the worst part, they had let the Dominion retreat. Velrix knew what that meant. The humans had not fought to destroy them. They had fought to send a message. They were not the weak, broken species the Dominion had once crushed. They were stronger, smarter, deadlier. The door to the command room slid open, and an officer stepped inside, his voice trembling. Commander, the Supreme Chancellor is waiting. Velrix took a deep breath and turned toward the holographic projector. The image of Supreme Chancellor Drennis flickered into view. His pale, reptilian face was unreadable, but his voice carried an edge of anger and fear. Explain, the Chancellor said coldly. Velrix clenched his jaw. We were ambushed. The humans had a fleet waiting for us. They were not scavengers. They were prepared. The council members, whose holograms floated beside the Chancellor, erupted in whispers. Chancellor Vorkin snarled, his crimson scales glistening. Impossible. They should be extinct. They are not, Velric said firmly. And if we do not take them seriously, they will destroy us. The room fell silent. Finally, the Supreme Chancellor spoke. What do you recommend, Commander? Velric hesitated. His instincts told him the Dominion was heading toward disaster. But he was a soldier. His duty was not to question, only to obey. We must mobilize the full fleet, he said. If we allow the humans to strengthen, they will become unstoppable. The Supreme Chancellor's eyes darkened. Then we will crush them before they get the chance. The transmission ended. Velric let out a slow breath. Something deep inside him whispered that this was the wrong move. But now, there was no turning back. The greatest war in Dominion history was about to begin. Aboard the Valkyrie, Daniel stood before a glowing star map, his expression unreadable. Around him, human officers watched the screen, their faces tense. They had won the battle. Now, the real war was coming. Admiral Reynolds stepped forward. The Dominion will return with everything they have. Daniel nodded. That's what we want. One of the officers frowned. Sir, they still outnumber us. Their fleets stretch across the entire galaxy. Even with our technology, we can't win a full-scale war. Daniel's gaze remained fixed on the map. We won't fight a full-scale war. We'll fight our war. Reynolds smirked. A war they don't understand. Daniel tapped the map, highlighting a cluster of Dominion-controlled systems. They rely on fear. They rule through control. If we strike the right places, their entire empire will start to collapse. Reynolds crossed his arms. So we don't just fight them. We make them fear us. Daniel nodded. We make them see what happens when they challenge humanity. The officers exchanged looks. It was risky, dangerous. But deep down, they knew this was the only way. The Phantom Armada would not fight a war of numbers. It would fight a war of terror. And soon, the Dominion would realize. Legends spoke of a species to fear. Now, humanity had returned. The Dominion fleet had gathered. Hundreds of warships floated in formation above Xerion Prime, one of the Dominion's most fortified worlds. The Supreme Chancellor had ordered this defensive wall, convinced that humanity would strike here first. But the humans were smarter than that. Aboard the Phantom Armada, Daniel stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, watching the Dominion fleet on the screen. The enemy had prepared for an invasion, but there would be no invasion. Admiral Reynolds gave a small smirk. They still think like rulers. They believe we'll fight for territory. Daniel's expression remained cold. We don't need territory. We need fear. He turned to his officers. Activate Phase 1. Across the Phantom Armada, human ships vanished into the void. It was time to strike. Xerion Prime, Dominion Command Center. Governor Kale paced nervously inside the command room. The fleet outside was powerful, but something felt wrong. The humans had disappeared after the last battle. No attacks, no signals, nothing. Sir, an officer suddenly shouted, we have lost contact with 3 outposts. Kel's eyes widened. What? Which ones? The officer's hands trembled. Mining stations on the edge of the system. No distress calls. No wreckage. They just vanished. A chill ran through the room. Then, another officer gasped. Sir, the Dravcor has been destroyed. Silence. Kel's voice was barely a whisper. How? The officer swallowed. Unknown. One moment, it was there. The next, it was gone. Panic spread like wildfire. The Dominion fleet was massive, yet they were the ones being hunted. And then the final blow came. Sir, the officer whispered. The humans, they sent a message. The room fell into an eerie silence as the screen flickered. A single sentence appeared in bold, glowing letters. The ghosts have returned. Aboard the Valkyrie, Daniel watched as Phase 1 unfolded. Outposts were being erased. Communications were cut. Entire Dominion ships were being pulled into the void, never to be seen again. And the Dominion had no idea how it was happening. Reynolds turned to Daniel. "They're panicking." Daniel's eyes were sharp. "Good. Now, we begin Phase 2. Reynolds gave the order. "Deploy the Shadow Fleet." Across the Phantom Armada, black ships emerged from the darkness, moving unseen through Dominion space. Their mission: to turn the Dominion's fear into terror. Viserion Prime. Dominion High Command. A meeting was called immediately. The Dominion leaders were panicked. "We are under attack," one commander shouted, "but we can't even see them." Chancellor Vorkin growled, slamming his fist onto the table. "We must strike back." Velarix, however, remained silent. He had studied human history. He knew how they fought. This was no ordinary war. This was a psychological attack. The humans were tearing the Dominion apart from the inside. And Velarix feared they had only just begun. Panic spread through the Dominion like a wildfire. Entire stations vanished. Communication lines went dark. Fleets meant to crush humanity were being hunted instead. But the most terrifying part: no one knew how it was happening. The Supreme Chancellor sat in his war room, his claws gripping the edges of his throne. His advisors whispered among themselves, fear creeping into their voices. "This is no ordinary enemy," one muttered. "They fight like ghosts," another said, "appearing from the shadows, striking, then disappearing before we can react." The Chancellor's eyes burned with anger. "They are still just humans. We destroyed them once. We can do it again." Velarix, standing silently at the edge of the room, finally spoke. "No," he said, his voice calm. "These are not the same humans." The room fell silent. Velarix stepped forward. "We assumed they were weak. We assumed they were desperate." His gaze swept across the frightened faces of the council members. "We were wrong." He placed a datapad on the table, and a holographic map appeared. Red dots marked every attack the humans had launched in the last 2 weeks. The pattern was clear. "They are not fighting for territory," Velarix continued. "They are breaking us." The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Velarix took a deep breath. "They are striking our supply lines. They are cutting off our strongest fleets. They are attacking our most vital systems." His voice lowered. "They are making the Dominion collapse from within." A tense silence filled the room. Then an alarm blared. An officer rushed into the chamber, his face pale. "Supreme Chancellor, we have just lost contact with 3 more planets." The Chancellor's claws dug into his throne. "Which ones?" The officer swallowed hard. "All central supply hubs. Our fleets are running low on fuel and food." A cold chill ran through the chamber. For the first time in history, the Dominion was facing true fear. Aboard the Valkyrie, Daniel watched the battle reports with quiet satisfaction. The plan was working. Across the galaxy, the Dominion's fleets were stranded, their supply chains cut. Without fuel, without resources, they were trapped in their own empire. Admiral Reynolds stepped beside him. "Their command is in chaos." Daniel nodded. "Now we move to Phase 3. Reynolds smirked. "Let's show them why humanity was once feared." Daniel's voice was cold. "Let's make them remember." The Phantom Armada moved again, striking at the heart of the Dominion. And with every battle, with every attack, the legend grew. The ghosts had returned. And soon, the Dominion would fall. The Dominion was crumbling. Entire fleets were stranded without fuel. Planets once loyal to the Dominion had begun to rebel. Governors pleaded for reinforcements that would never come. Fear had spread like a plague. The name Phantom Armada was whispered in terror. No one knew where they would strike next. No one knew how they fought. No one knew how to stop them. The Dominion was losing. But the Supreme Chancellor refused to accept it. Dominion War Council, Central Command. The chamber was filled with silence. The highest-ranking leaders of the Dominion sat around a massive table, their faces grim. Too many battles had been lost. Too many ships had vanished. Supreme Chancellor Drennis slammed his fist against the table. "Enough," he growled. "Where are they now?" An officer hesitated. We don't know, Supreme Chancellor." Drennis's eyes darkened. "What do you mean, you don't know?" Velric stood at the side of the chamber, watching the panic spread through the room. He already knew the truth. The humans were watching them, waiting, choosing their final target. Drennis turned to Velric. "You have studied these creatures more than anyone. Tell me, how do we stop them?" Velric hesitated. The answer was simple. You don't. The war was already over. The Dominion just didn't know it yet. But instead of speaking his thoughts, Velric simply said, "We need to prepare for their next strike." Drennis scowled. "And where will that be?" A deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Here." The room froze. The lights flickered. Screens glitched. Alarms blared. A message appeared on every holographic display. "You thought we were gone. You thought we were weak. You thought you could break us. Now we break you." The screens shattered into static. And then the attack began. Aboard the Valkyrie, Daniel stood in silence, staring at the massive Dominion command station on the screen. "This is it," Admiral Reynolds said beside him. "Their central command, the heart of the Dominion." Daniel nodded. "And this." The Phantom Armada decloaked. Hundreds of human warships emerged from the darkness, surrounding the Dominion's strongest base. The final battle had begun. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams ripped through Dominion defenses. The once mighty Empire scrambled in panic. Inside the command center, Velric stood still as officers shouted for orders. The Supreme Chancellor's voice was full of rage. "Fight. Destroy them." But it was already too late. The humans were not fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for revenge. And nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. The final battle had begun. The once mighty Dominion command station was now a battlefield. Human warships rained destruction from all sides, tearing through defenses that had once been considered unbreakable. Inside the station, alarms screamed. Officers rushed back and forth, their faces pale with fear. Velric stood still, watching the chaos. It was over. The Supreme Chancellor still barked orders, his voice filled with rage. "Fight. Destroy them." But no one could stop what was coming. The Phantom Armada had come to finish the war. Aboard the Valkyrie, Daniel stood at the center of the command deck, his eyes fixed on the enemy station. The battle outside was already decided. "We have full control of the battlefield," Admiral Reynolds reported. Daniel nodded. "Then let's end this." A transmission request appeared on the screen. The Supreme Chancellor was calling them. "Put him through," Daniel said. The holographic image of Chancellor Drennis flickered into view. His once proud face was now filled with desperation. "You think you've won?" The Chancellor growled. "You think you can destroy the Dominion?" Daniel's expression remained cold. "It's already destroyed." The Chancellor bared his teeth. "We will rebuild. We will return, stronger than ever." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "No, you won't." The Valkyrie's main cannon charge. A massive energy buildup appeared on the screen. Drennis's eyes widened. "Wait." The screen went dark. A bright flash filled the void. The Dominion command station, the heart of the Empire, was gone. The fall of the Dominion. With their leadership wiped out, the remaining Dominion fleets surrendered. Some tried to flee, but they had nowhere to go. Worlds under Dominion rule rose in rebellion. Governors abandoned their posts. Fleets disbanded. The mighty Dominion, which had ruled the galaxy for centuries, was no more. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the hunters into the hunted. They had made the galaxy remember. Aboard the Valkyrie, after the battle, Daniel stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage of the Dominion's last stronghold. Admiral Reynolds walked up beside him. "It's over." Daniel nodded. "For them." Reynolds crossed his arms. "And for us." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Now we rebuild. On our terms." The Phantom Armada had won. And now, humanity's legend would never be forgotten again. Because legends spoke of a species to fear. And now, humanity had returned.